All right, grasshoppers. You've seen this handsome face once before already. Is that Jaromir Jagr?
Must be good about you.
Oh, no. Is that Jaromir Jagr without hair? Is that what it is?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I shaved the mullet.
There you go. So Mark Roseman, an old friend, a good friend of mine. We'll discuss a little bit here of the project he and I are doing together and the 700 books that Mark has done. Might be exaggerated just a little bit, but just real quick, guys. Anybody that watched this yesterday with Ron Greshner and Dave Maloney, we discussed this Mitchell Miller that was drafted in the 4th round by Arizona. And we didn't know all the details either, nor did it appear Arizona or anybody. And we were talking about, should he be given a second chance? And maybe it's a good idea to give him a second chance. But since then, the Arizona has renounced that draft pick, so he's no longer been drafted by the Arizona Coyotes. So, and you hear some of the stuff. I don't know if you followed it much, Mark. It appears part of it is, the stuff he did was just. I don't know where he would even think of doing some of the stuff that he did reportedly. And the fact, from what the family is saying of the young boy that he abused, he hasn't even apologized yet. It sort of appears that he's really not doing much to turn his life around. So I just wanted to update everybody on that, because I know we discussed it yesterday. So, Mark, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. Good. As well as everyone could be expected these days, for sure.
Yeah, definitely. So, and you're working from home now, right? So you've got a radio gig that you do as well?
Yeah, I do radio, but we put it on hiatus to do the project we're doing with you and AJ. So that's and I'm in the midst of writing another book right now.
What is that? I know I exaggerated. It says 700 books. But how many books is that?
This will be 7.
Oh, okay.
7. Yeah.
So, and you write them yourself?
What's that?
You write them all yourself? You don't
know. So on 6 of them, my co-author has been Howie Carpin, who is an official scorer at Citi Field and Yankee Stadium, longtime official scorer. And one of them, I've worked with AJ, who is my co-host, and I'm going to be doing another one with AJ as well, which will be book number 8 after I finish this one.
So what are some of the Ranger books or hockey books you've done?
So the very first book I did was called Shoot to Thrill, and it was a history of the NHL shootout, which was pretty cool. I mean, the idea came to me because doing the radio show, and no exaggeration, because I'm actually sitting at my kitchen table, and every single day from different publishers, I get different books. In fact, a good friend of yours, this one just came yesterday, and all these. So I get books all the time because for the radio show, they want to get the authors on. Right. And I had gotten this one book called Facing Mariano, and it was just a compilation of probably 100 different players that had faced Mariano Rivera. And it was just like little anecdotes about how they did and what their mindset was. And Howie Carpin, who's a good friend of mine, says, you should write a book. I said, I'm not really a writer. I'm more, I like to interview post-game stuff or just long-form interviews on the radio show. He goes, no, you should write it. I said, you want to write one with me? Fine. He said, yeah. So we sat there trying to think of some ideas, and it was the 10th anniversary of the shootout. I said, what would be probably cool? Maybe just the evolution of the shootout. Go back to, the penalty shot in, regular games or penalty shots in playoffs, and then talk about, international play, the shootout in the Olympics, and then how the rule came about. And then in speaking to Pete Weber, the great Nashville Predators announcer, he was like the second or third interview I did. And he just asked me a question. He goes, game on the line, like who would you want in goal and who would you want to be your shooter? Yeah. And that actually became a chapter. So every single person we had interviewed from that point on, we asked every player, every GM, every coach, and that was pretty cool.
Was there any general consensus on that name kept coming up?
Lemieux was the guy, and Ludwig basically put it in perspective for me. He said, Mario Lemieux got behind me. He said he had a step on me. I caught up. I jumped on his back. He was able to make 3 moves while I was on his back and score. So that was interesting. And the most shocking one, though, for me was Glenn Sather when I asked him. And he said, Mike Bossy. And I looked at him. I said, Glenn, you had the greatest hockey player ever in the history of the game, and you're taking Bossy over Gretzky? He said, Bossy was just a natural goal scorer when he came to that. And he said, yeah. And I told Bossy that. He goes, then why didn't he draft me?
Yeah. And, that's the thing with Wayne, too. Like, that really wasn't his thing, was, getting breakaways and scoring. Right. He wasn't that kind of player. Like, you talk about Lemieux, I could see him more making those moves. He's a big guy, hard to move and everything. Gretz was more, like the great passes, the big
Gretz could score behind the net, not so much in front, right?
Yeah.
So that was the first, and it was a fun project. And the second one was just strange the way it came about. Was so I'm 60. I grew up with Mets baseball, and here in New York, synonymous with Mets baseball is Ralph Kiner, and he had this post game show called Kiner's Corner, and it was just it was just like the thing we watched. It was as a kid watching replays after the game was a cool thing, and the week after Ralph passed away, I actually came across a Betamax tape that we were in the midst of downsizing and cleaning up, and it was 1985 opening day, and it was like a week after Ralph had passed away. And I'm just saying to myself, like, please be there, please be there. I ran into the garage. I actually still had a Betamax, popped in the tape, fast forwarded, and there it was. It was Ralph with Mookie Wilson and Gary Carter from opening day of '85, and I said, that would be a cool project, since he did the show, for 3 decades, trying to find 10 guys from each decade, just to talk about the process and things like that. So that was that book. The next book was, since the root of my Ranger fandom really comes from, the third book was New York Rangers by the Numbers, because I was still without publisher, and so it was just basically a complete history of the Rangers is broken down by numbers. So every single number one, it was just little synopsises of them, and that was because the publisher wanted that. And then the fourth one was a project I really wanted to do, and it was where the root of my fandom comes from. And you had the guys on the other day and talking about it. And the '79 Ranger team was really what solidified my love for the team.
It's amazing that a lot of people, when that team in particular, so a lot of people too, the first year I played, the '80-'81, more because of the big brawl, I think, in LA. It's like that too. But that '79 team is really popular. Yeah.
So, Howie and I were sitting around, and I just said, had that '94 team never won the Cup, the '79 team would probably be the most beloved team because they overachieved. Like '94, they were expected to win the Cup. '79, first of all, beating the Islanders was huge.
Right. And the characters on the team were really like John Verdon.
Right. Yeah. And for me to get to speak to every single guy on that team that's still around. I tracked down every single guy, guys that played one game. It was, which is also the chase is part of the thrill of writing the book, trying to find the guys, track them down, and then get, different stories. Pat Hickey was just,
I swear to God, I was just going to mention Pat Hickey. He could talk forever. He's a great guy.
A great storyteller too. Great storyteller, and also like in asking him what's the most memorable thing you take, and Anders Hedberg said he's reminded of that game every single day in his gym and home. He's got a picture of him coming over the boards and Denny Potvin just on the side of the boards, and he just smiles every time he sees that picture.
Is that where Denny's sitting on the ice leaning?
Yeah. He said so. That's one of his favorites. So that was such a cool project because it was just getting to speak to every guy, And then the next one was those I all did with Howie, and this one I did with AJ. I'd coached my son in travel baseball for 10 years. He's now 31. And, I had realized I'd been off a field more than I'd been on a field with him at that point. Every single time I passed the baseball field, I had that feeling like of all those memories of like this. It was travel baseball. So, I mean, the amount of weeks and hours and days we were on fields and the driving to and from the tournaments and stuff, lots of quality time. And I always just wondered, like, if other fathers, baseball, was that shared experience. So I wanted to do a book about fathers and sons in baseball, track down a whole bunch of, fathers and sons, the Griffeys, the McRaes, the Boones, the Bells, spoke to them. But the spine of the book, which was AJ's idea, was for my son and I to be teammates at this time because he's an adult. So we went down to Met Fantasy Camp together and played on a team together for an entire week. And one of the best experiences of my life. And it was great.
Yeah.
And then the next project, which you were part of, was, over the course of the 12, 13 years doing the radio show, whenever we speak to athletes and we talk about their first games, their recollection is so vivid and so clear and, to what they had for breakfast that day. So we interviewed 61 New York Rangers and just remembering various firsts. First day they were drafted, like you, shoveling,
Yeah.
crap in the barn. And different guys, how they found out they were drafted, their first, minor league game, their first pro game, their first goal, first fight, things like that.
Right.
And now I'm doing the same thing with the Mets, up to interview number 38, New York Mets. Similar, stories.
Go back to the Rangers. What's some of the stories that really stuck out to you that you kind of surprised you or they're really funny? Or
one of the ones which I'm surprised it hasn't gotten more traction, and I just love it for everything it is, because it's not a first, it's actually a last, and it was John Muckler, and the last game he coached was Wayne Gretzky's last game as well. And so Muckler's daughter was pregnant and due to give birth, any day. Right. So he had gotten word to the New York Rangers public relations department at any time if his wife gives birth, even if it's again, get word down to me. So with about a minute 24 left in that Gretzky's final game, someone comes down. He says it was JR, who's, people that know the Rangers, he's the he's the head of Ranger public relations. I asked JR, and he vaguely remembers it. He couldn't corroborate it, but and even if he can, the story's still great. So and Muckler told it to me. So he said that he came down and said, "You're a grandfather," and so he calls timeout, and he calls Gretzky over to the bench. Now, everyone at the Garden, he says, is figuring he's calling timeout, so he's giving Gretzky the opportunity to go back out of center ice one more time, and get the applause. He calls Gretzky over to the bench. He goes, "Wayne, I'm a grandfather. I need you to go out and score a goal for my grandchild." And Wayne looks at him. He goes, 10 years ago, I could have done it. He goes, "Don't count on it," and he skates back out of center ice. So I thought that was pretty cool. There was just so many, the way, you with your first goal, the way you described it, against your own goalie, just so many, and just the pure joy. Because when you talk about Nifty, Rick Middleton, didn't realize that he scored his first 2 goals in the Washington Capitals' first game ever. Yeah, and he really didn't remember much of the game, and I really tried to track down that game, and I figured, the first game in Washington Capitals history, someone would have a copy of it. I reached out to the Capitals. No one's got a copy of that game, believe it or not. Not radio, not television, which is surprising. We're not talking 40s.
Great idea for a book, too, because you think about it, I'm sitting here thinking now, these guys, with all of us, we dreamed all our lives of getting, in this case, the National Hockey League. And I guess it's the same with other athletes too in other sports. And then, when you're finally doing that first thing, like your first game, your first fight, your first goal, whatever it is, man, it means so much to you, right? That moment that you'll never really forget.
Yeah. And then there's other firsts, like first playoff game, how it differs. The first Stanley Cup, for some guys, that 79 was the first and only Stanley Cup final they were ever in, and just remembering that. For the 94 guys, the first ticker tape parade, first impressions of Mike Keenan as their coach. There are other weird firsts, like you would never think, like so Sean Avery is in a movie before he's a New York Ranger, playing a New York Ranger in the Rocket Richard movie. Oh. And he talked about it, and it was fascinating because he said the director was so into real detail that they were actually wearing equipment from the 40s and 50s, the skates and the sticks. And he said, and he really had to learn to skate with those skates. He said so that was pretty cool. And
you get me thinking now about all my first too. I know we talked about a lot of stuff, but the first time coming to the Garden, I remember the first time I flew into LaGuardia Airport, and back then they didn't have limos to pick us up, so I just took a cab. There's a transit strike in the city, and I think it took me like 2 hours to get from LaGuardia to Madison Square Garden. And the cabbie drops me off, and I've got my hockey equipment, my bags, and everything, and I'm dropping sticks on the 7th Avenue. Man, I was so nervous. It was unbelievable. It just gets me thinking now about all the stuff when you're talking.
Yeah, and it's funny, like you tell me that, and it triggers other things that are interesting that you would have, stories you would have never gotten. Rick Bennett, who is a very successful college coach now. Rick Bennett told me that when he got called up, he took a cab to the Garden, and while he was in the cab, he was listening to Howard Stern, and Howard Stern, I guess Robin was doing the news or they did a sports thing, and Howard asked about it. He goes, "Oh, he's some goon." So yeah, Rick Bennett sitting in the cab listening to Howard Stern talk about him before he even played one NHL game, which was pretty cool. So yeah, then there's other like strange like first, like Eddie Shack had a racehorse named after him, and there was a hit song in Canada, about Eddie Shack, and just hearing that, him hearing that for the first time. So lots of little weird, quirky firsts. Also, you find out. And the same thing now doing the baseball book. I'm finding that as well. So yeah, so it's fun. It occupies, especially now, it's occupying a lot of my time, which I have.
Well, I'm doing a book right now too. We're just about done, and it's been really it's a little different. It's more of a motivational thing, like things that happened to me in my life and how I either recovered from bad things or stuff. And it's been really interesting, because now it kind of forces you to look back at your life and why you are the way you are. So a little bit different, but it is fascinating. I never would have thought I would be doing a book.
Yeah.
So I think the next one we're going to do, everybody's talking about doing a cookbook now. So I never thought I'd be doing a cookbook either, but it sounds like a fun idea. So, all right. So you got all the books going on. And then you and I now have gotten together this, I'll let you describe it a little bit more, but radio.co. So there's radio.com. And that's where actual radio stations are all on one location.
Radio.co is, well, no. So what's happened now has been a tremendous shift.
Just explain it. So there's a difference between radio.co and radio.com. Right. So radio.com is where all the radio stations all come together. We're getting involved in something on radio.co. So
Right. So what we're doing is there is a tremendous boom in internet radio because of smart devices, smartphones, and just the internet available everywhere. You don't need the big broadcast tower. You don't need to spend hundreds of $1,000s a month just to keep a radio station alive. You can build your own. And over the course of like 12, 13 years at the radio station I've been at, I've seen like such tremendous differences. When AJ and I first started there, it was all talk. Then it went to, that's my dog going crazy in the background. Oh, wait, he just took something he should not have. I'll be right back. Wait, right here.
So one of our listeners, Barry Shelley, just like he's a reader. So Barry's a good friend of ours. He wants to talk about this new radio station. That's what we're doing. Yep.
Right. Yeah, Barry, a nice fan of the show as well, and he's got a very cool Facebook page, Rink of Dreams. And actually, I'm going to be up in Cooperstown. I might actually stop by his place. So internet radio seems to be the way to go. And, I've looked at the land. Oh, and I was talking about the way our radio station changed format. So they went from all talk, which was great. That's what we were. We talked sports radio. And they went to gospel, which was a little tough for us. I mean, I don't know how many of the gospel people we were piggybacking on that stayed tuned to listen to us. Then it went back to all talk, which was great. But we also established our own niche because we also streamed the same way like this. I mean, at the same time we simulcasted. And then, so we had our own little niche, but then they went to all Bollywood. And that was a little tough for us as well because we didn't really have a tremendous lead in from that. So I decided, let me look into this internet radio. So I'm starting to build out an internet radio station as well as you're one of the founding partners with AJ and I, and we're looking for interesting shows. And I kind of think, and I might be wrong. I mean, I don't like the current format of sports talk radio. There's great talent. I mean, I love Don LaGreca. I absolutely love Don LaGreca. But some of the other guys, I can't listen to 4 hours a day of the same stuff every day. So I like the podcast format. So I kind of figure if we can get like at least one guy for every sports team out there or just regional guys to do an hour a week. That's all it needs to be, an hour a week. Because the content would change. So like for us, we're Sports Talk New York. A guy who's going to be following me is Brett Topel, and he's got a baseball show. It's BT Talks Baseball. Howie Carpin is going to do a show. Rich Catino is going to do a show. You're going to do a show. Kevin Allen's going to do a show. So the variety is there. It's constant. And again, unfortunately, as Americans, our attention span has dwindled. It's not, we don't have the attention span to listen to the same things, for hours at a time. So if you're switching it up every hour, I think it makes for a compelling radio. And I hope, and that's what our model is hoping to be. We're also going to be having pro players on. Whereas sports talk radio, when I speak to a lot of the executive producers, they just want them there as co-hosts. They don't want them to host. But I find them more compelling. The guys who played the game know the game better than anybody. And that's who I like to hear from. So we're also adding a whole bunch of pro players, hockey, baseball, football, and basketball. So, and we're looking to launch January 3rd is the hard date. It's 365sportscast.com. You'll be able to say, Alexa, play 365sportscast.com. It will come up on your smart speaker, your Google Home, be on your smartphone. It'll have its own app. So we're really excited about it.
Right. And we'll have some different stuff too. We'll have like some sports motivation stuff, some,
Right.
sports fitness, sports, coaching youth sports. So it won't all just be pro sports too. It's going to be kind of some educational stuff, for coaches and parents and too. So I'm looking forward to that. That's going to be interesting. And I think the good thing for like a lot of the guys that we'll be getting on the show will be guys that maybe currently have a podcast, right? Maybe it hasn't taken traction as much as they'd like to, but now being part of this bigger,
right. And that's the way we see it too, because instead of being like a minnow in the ocean with all these podcasts, which are difficult to find, we'll be a brand. And with that brand, you'll be able to every day just, tune it in. And especially now with all these cars with Apple Play, if it's on your phone, you plug it in and stream right over your radio in your car. So it will be accessible to everybody.
Good. That sounds like a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to it. Yeah.
Me too. I am too.
So let's talk a little sports here. You're a big Mets fan too, correct?
Yes.
And what do you think about Steve Cohen taking over the team?
I like it better than A-Rod and J-Lo. I just think, I think J-Lo would have brought, I think they would have looked at it more as an entertainment piece as baseball. Even though A-Rod's a good baseball guy, he knows the sport. I think Cohen is a fan first, a fan with a lot of money who wants to see the team get back to its previous glory. So I don't think there'll be any free agent that's out of reach. Where in the past, as Boris would say, the Mets used to shop in the frozen food aisle. I think with Cohen, they're going to be looking at the steak aisle now for sure.
And we have our brilliant mayor of New York City trying to.
He's doing I think he's gonna write a book, How Not to Get Reelected, because what do you over and above everything else he's done? Like now you've alienated every Met fan that lives in New York City, so they're not gonna vote for him either.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think what the political game is behind the scenes, right? He says he's doing their due diligence. I mean, I guess he's kind of got that thing. His kind of shtick is that he's against the billionaires. He's for the little people, right? So,
I think he's also worried that, Cohen had issue in the past with inside trading and stuff like that, but he paid his fine and whatever. But that's over and done with. And what does that have to do with the mayor of New York?
Right. And and besides, A-Rod certainly had his issues too. I mean, he lied to the whole world for years about his steroid use and everything else.
And not only that, I mean, people forget this, and this is the thing that bothers me the most about A-Rod is, no one forgives Pete Rose, and no one puts Pete Rose in the Hall of Fame. And he had an issue, which was a gambling addiction. With A-Rod, it goes deeper. So not only did A-Rod lie about taking steroids, but while he was still taking steroids, he became a member of the, I think his name was Tyler Hooton Foundation, which was, the father lost his son who was a high school ball player who was taking steroids because he wanted to get a college scholarship. And because of the depression and everything that was associated with it, eventually committed suicide. So A-Rod ended up being on that foundation while he was still doing steroids and going into schools to talk about, this is all alleged, but I don't have hard facts, but that's what the story is, and that bothered me. Yeah, I got to do one more thing with my dog because he's like, I think he wants to be on the show actually.
Yeah, get him on, let's go. We have our dog show. So I really like with A-Rod for me. I mean, to have him now potentially running a team, I think, after his history, and I give him a lot of credit. It appears that he's really kind of changed his life around, but not a real credible man, that's for sure.
No, not at all. So here's this is actually the first dog in like 30 years. In 30 years, that's not named after a Ranger.
Is that right?
Yeah, my first golden retriever was Ranger. My second golden doodle was Yager, and the one after that was Madison after Madison Square Garden. This one's Miyagi after Mr. Miyagi from the Karate Kid.
There you go.
Yeah. So
what's your favorite New York sports team then? The Rangers?
Yes, the Rangers are, and the Mets are a very close second. It's I think if the Mets had been a little more successful over the last, decade, they might, it varies. Like the 86 Mets, I'd have to admit, like 86 Mets to 86 Rangers, it was definitely the 86 Mets.
Yeah.
But from 94 on, it's been the Rangers.
Your favorite Ranger?
Yeah, well, it's interesting. So you have different decades, so like, there's Park, there's, Barry Beck, there's Fatiou, there's, Jockerman, there's JD, there's you, there's Ty Domi. And then, from covering the team, it's Henrik and believe it or not, Brian Boyle, just because of just the people they are. Over and above how great Hank was, as a player, he's just a great person and so giving his time and just so honest. No matter what the issue with the game was, he would sit and he would talk. And Brian Boyle also, I mean, brutally honest, like one of the most real people you'll meet in the game.
Yeah, and the way he carried himself too when he went through his illness with the cancer and everything, just like really. I mean, obviously he was composed and everything, but he was thinking of other people and his family.
Yep.
And, he wanted to be like a role model, and yeah.
And then what he went through with his son Declan as well. But that comes from his family and the support of his his brothers and sisters. I mean, he's got enough for a whole hockey team there. His family.
That's true.
And it's cool when I got to cover Dominic Moore. I mean, there's listen, that run, that team had just so many really great quality players. Ryan Callahan, who did the forward to the last Ranger book. Girardi, Stahl. I mean, it's tough for me to see those two guys go in one off season, and you see the attrition of all those guys. I mean, the only one left now is Kreider from that Cup team, because Foss is gone now too.
That's
so
right.
So a lot of guys that meant a lot. Nash, a lot of really good quality players on those teams.
Yeah, good guys too, right? I mean, in some ways, they're almost like Dave has said this before on our show that most recent team, they're almost like too good of guys. Like you look at a Brady Shea, fantastic. I've been in some events with him, fantastic guy. You'd want him to marry your daughter. That's what Dave has said. You want a few of those guys that are a little bit nastier too, but I think that's maybe us a little bit more old school too, but you still.
But yet some of the nasty guys on ice were some of the nicest guys. Like Dan Carcillo is an unbelievably nice guy.
Yeah, Nick Fatiou is one of the all-time.
Oh my God, Nicky's great. Nicky's like that's unfortunately when I used to play street hockey. If you take a look at my high school yearbook, 90% of it signed it to Nick because that was my nickname. This is the way I played hockey. Didn't score many goals, but but no one stayed in front of my goalie.
That's fun. That's good. Well, that's funny. Like we had Clark Gillies on our show too, and man, he was one of the most feared guys. And thank God he was a good guy because he really wasn't like the guy trying to hurt you. He was going to defend his team, and he do it very well. But he was fantastic on our show. He was just like it's like we were all brothers. It's like even though we played against each other and hated each other when we did, it was good to have him on too. So
yeah, and Kotze loves the fact that he beat. He gave him Gillies a good shot.
Yeah,
Kostopoulos loves that fight.
Yes, he lives in the past. Our boy Kotze does that. How about with football, Jets or Giants?
That's like, great choice. I am a Jet fan. It's brutal. It's just absolutely brutal. It's just that, and it's so funny because every football season I tell myself I'm not going to sit there and I'm not going to, spend time watching this. And every football season I do. And, they make it easy though, because they're out of it by the first quarter. So then you can go and do whatever you need to do.
The sad thing is too, you watch other games around the league and other teams. You look at Kansas City with Mahomes, Tom Brady out in Tampa, and all the other. Man, some exciting football going on, right? I mean, really good young players. And then unfortunately here, I'm a fan of Daniel Jones. I'm a Giants fan, and I think he'll be okay. But right now, at least I see the Giants seem to be trying a little bit more. The Jets, you really question that. And what's the point spread? They were talking about on Boomer show this morning, talking about the point spread is like 20 or something with Kansas City.
I'm more interested in, and this is what as soon as Bell landed on Kansas City, I looked at that game. It's probably going to be the worst Jet game in probably the last 2 decades. But I'd be interested what the under/over of total yardage Le'Veon Bell is going to get in that game because Mahomes is a great guy and he's one of those guys that knows how to lead a team as well. So knowing him, he knows how motivated Bell is going to be.
Right.
And I think they're going to feature him in a way that the Jets are just going to get torched.
Yeah. I
love watching Mahomes. He's my favorite for sure.
You know what I think? I bet you in the third quarter, probably or fourth quarter, probably it's going to be such a blowout. They'll take Mahomes out of the lineup anyways, right?
Yeah. They're not going to risk him getting hurt. But there's no one on the Jets that gets to a quarterback, so there's no risk of him getting hurt.
Yeah.
It's probably more of a risk on the sidelines.
Man, you look at all it's funny. You look around in all the sports, really. There's some great young athletes, right? I mean, all the football players, the hockey now has got some great young players too, and it's pretty inspiring for all the sports. So, how about basketball? Are you a big basketball fan?
Because I watch so much hockey, it's tough. Because given a choice of watching a hockey game or a basketball game, it's no contest for me. So I watched. I kind of enjoyed the playoffs this year just because of the camera angles and the high def and the way they were so close to the court. I found that to me was like a throwback to like when I used to watch, the 69-70 Knicks, those era, and for me, as a kid in high school, I also worked at the Nassau Coliseum when Dr. J was with the Nets. And that was, he was just a magician with the ball. And there's other guys, back in my era that don't get the cred. Like David Thompson, to me, was one of the greatest basketball players I ever saw. And people of this generation don't even know him. Yeah. Iceman Gervin. So, I would say 70s to early 80s was probably when I really followed basketball. Not so much now. LeBron. LeBron, it's interesting because of the championships with the different teams. That's
I was a pretty big. I'm the same way, and I was a pretty big basketball fan. Larry Bird, Michael Jordan, Larry Bird. Yeah. When I was in LA, Magic Johnson was there and everything, and he was a pretty cool guy. Like, so we'd see him in the Great Western Forum sometimes, and he'd always like to sit around, chat, and talk. Yeah. So interesting guy.
It's funny, because in the Mets' first book, I did come across an interesting first. So Jeff Innes, who was a relief pitcher for the Mets, he made one start in his entire career. Jeff Innes actually gave up the first professional hit to Michael Jordan. Oh. So Jordan was 0 for 13, and he hit a little infield squibbler that, he's so fast he beat it out. And Innes was talking about it. He said, and Jeff is very self-deprecating. It's also funny, like we talked about, and Jeff gave this line too, which I found interesting. We talk about the first baseball card you got as a kid, and then reflect on when you got your baseball, when you saw yourself on a baseball card. And what Innes said was like, he said he realized when he opened up a pack and got himself, he was the guy as a kid he hated getting. He said, you always wanted the star, and you would get like this, relief pitcher that, and he said, oh, great, another Jeff Innes. But he told the story about that first hit that he gave up to Jordan. And he said, like, it was a spring training game and people came up to him. And he said he was kind of a dick about it. He said, I didn't realize that these games count. And I didn't realize me giving up his first hit is going to make him a Hall of Famer. Right. It's like, he said he should have embraced it. He said, but by the same respects, like his brother called him after the game. He was, oh, I saw you on the news. He said his brother hadn't called him like 3 weeks because he gave up a hit to Michael Jordan. He's calling him up. But yeah, it was pretty funny.
That's funny. You make me think of some things too. I remember when I was a kid, you talk about cars and that. And my father somehow, we lived in the Toronto area, so he got me into Maple Leaf Gardens, and it was a pregame skate in the morning. And I got to meet Bobby Hall, and I had a little miniature stick. I lost it someplace, but he signed it, and he was so nice to me too. Like he was just like, it meant so much to me. It's one of those moments that you just remember so much. Yeah. And then fast forward to my second year pro, and Bobby Hall was going to try to come out of retirement, and he played with Anders Hedberg, Ulf Nielsen in Winnipeg, and he was going to now come back and try out with the New York Rangers. So we were skating over here at our practice facility in Rye, New York, and we went for lunch together. And Bobby, we sat there, I don't know, it was probably 5 or 6 of us. We sat there for hours, and he told stories. It was just, he was holding court. It was unbelievable, to go from a little kid to seeing him at Maple Leaf Gardens to now sit with him lunch. We went over it was Herbie Brooks' first year too. We went over to Finland for training camp. And it was quite an experience to be with him. He was a great guy. I mean, he ultimately didn't work out for him. But
it's interesting you mentioned Hull, because this is one of the things I was talking about for me that I think, because I was at the All-Star game and Tampa and Toronto, the last couple in St. Louis. I was just there. And I was asking the guys, the press guys, to me, I would love to see when they do that hardest shot contest.
Yeah.
This year, like they brought out some older guys just to do it.
Yeah.
I think they should do, when they do the 4 rounds, I think 2 rounds should be done with a wood stick. Because, like Ho was able to get, that shot over 100 miles an hour with a wood stick. I'd like to see what these guys that are registering 110 with these composite sticks and the whip, what it would be with a wood stick.
Well, Albert Guinness used a wood stick too. Doug Wilson, those guys had good shots, and they were all wood sticks. Yeah, no, it's true.
I would love to see that. I'd love to see what Shea Weber could do with a wood stick from the point.
Yeah, it is interesting because like if I go out now to a clinic or a charity game or something and use one of those new sticks, they're really light and everything.
Yeah,
I mean, I can't stick all that well with a wood stick, but with the, I honest to God, like the puck just explodes on my stick. So I have a wood stick. I go to clinics and stuff like that. People are looking at it like, where the heck did you get that? But yeah, it is. Yeah, it's something. The new equipment now. I mean, listen, these are fantastic athletes now, but training and the new equipment they have and everything, both to protect them and play better. It's. I mean, we used to get we had a new pair of gloves. We'd have to wear them for a couple of weeks before you wear them. Now you can pull them out of the bag and play right away.
Yeah. And you didn't have the dryers on the end of the bench either, did you guys? Yeah. I mean, I used to watch Girardi after every shift. Those things would go down to the end of the bench on the dryers, and
Yeah, no, we didn't. There was none of that for our stuff. Yeah, we were soaked. I mean, it was the old leather gloves too, So, and this, the weight of it and the smell in the locker room.
Oh yeah. Oh, when I used to come home from any games, my wife would not let it had to stay in the garage. She said those gloves are not coming in the house. It's and they did stink. They were brutal.
We had the skates were all leather and everything too. Yeah. You in some ways you'd lose your body weight. You'd weigh yourself after the game. You could lose 7 or 8 pounds. But it was just all sitting in your equipment. It's just all sweat. So it was the fans are loving hearing this stuff. But well, listen, I'm really looking forward to getting going with this radio.co. So if anybody is out there that wants to participate in this, they can contact you.
Absolutely. They can either contact me via Facebook. My name's right on the screen, and that's the name I use on Facebook. Or they can email me at sportstalknewyork, all one word, all spelled out, @gmail.com. Okay. And I'll give them, what the basis is, how we're doing it, and we'll go from there.
It's going to be a fun project. It's going to be one of those things too. I think, like you said, we'll have a whole wide range of sports topics. It'll be all the sport, everything going on. So it'll be fun to do. All right. Well, listen, it's great to have you. And so you're just going to keep on writing books the rest of your life until you.
I don't know. I'm running out of ideas. Yes. Yeah. Listen. I mean, the first I can do for every team. I mean, it's just the Rangers and the Mets are the ones I really have the most contact with. But there are lots of interesting stories, and it's just fun. And I spoke to Benny Agbayani last night, and just some of his first, and his pinch hit grand slam in Japan, and just unfortunately he had broken his hand prior to 9/11, so he was home. He wasn't on the road with the Mets in Pittsburgh. He actually was in New York, but he talked about the Piazza game, and there's just you get to lots of interest. And with the Met ones, I spoke to 2 original Mets. One of them, Hobie Landreth, is 90, and the other one was Frank Thomas, is 91, and when I grow up, that's what I want to be. Because at 91 and 90, these guys, their recall, I can't remember what I had for breakfast an hour ago. These guys remembered everything. It was amazing.
It is funny. I know with our show that I have with Dave and Ron, getting some of the old guys back on and telling the old stories, and some of the stuff that you kind of remember, kid, did this really happen? But they were there, and you're telling about it. So it is fun. Like told many people, Nicky Fotiu is one of the all-time best, and one of the most popular people we've had on as far as viewers. And he was fantastic telling those stories, and he's a funny man too. So
he's very cool. I got to spend time when Kotze had a charity golf tournament for one of the Ys that he's involved with, and there was a couple of flyers there too, and it was it was interesting to say the least. Yeah, but Nicky's good people too.
Yes, definitely. All right. Well, it was great to have you on, and we'll do this again, and we'll update everybody on how this radio.co is going. So it'll be a lot of fun though. All right, good to see you, bud.
Awesome. Be good, Tommy. Thanks a lot.
Bye.
Bye-bye.